Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Jana Eubank. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by. I am so happy to have you. I am a total paper nerd. I love scrapbooking. I love everything to do with paper and stickers. And if you are too, then we are going to be fast friends. All right, I am still having a ball with my January 2023 kits. My February kits are here and I've been playing with those too, but I've had this layout in the back of my mind ever since I received my January kit. And so I had to scrapbook it before I moved completely on to February. The reason why is because my daughter was an English major, and you see this paper with the books in a ring? I have to use that paper on a book about her. She is holding some awards that she received at an English department banquet dinner, and so I thought that these book wreaths would make the perfect base for a layout about this memory. I'm going to go ahead and cut out the smaller circle of books. Of course, I'm preserving the outer circle of books for another layout that I'll actually back with paper and maybe tuck some things in. But today I'm going to be using the smaller ring of books. I'm going to take a minute to fussy cut that out. The inside part of the books is much straighter than the outside part, so I didn't show that because it took so long. But right here, I'm going to cut out the center of this smaller ring with a circle cutter. This is an old circle cutter. It was by Provocraft. I can't remember what it's called, but I had to leave this part in because my cat is so cute. He loves to watch me scrapbook, and he is there just taking in all of the details. Sometimes I think, you know what, if you had hands, I think you would be a scrapbooker kitty. So I always love when he hangs out with me. Now, as I'm cutting out this ring, he's watching for little offcuts of paper to play with. He always gets in my trash can and pulls out little strips or packaging and just loves to have a ball with them. Does your cat do that too? Do you have a cat? My cat loves paper too, so that's pretty fun. All right, I grabbed some navy cardstock from my stash, and I'm going to use this to mat my overall layout. I do go ahead and gut out the center of that navy cardstock so that I can use it elsewhere. I seem to grab navy cardstock a lot, so I like to preserve the scraps if I can. I'm going to use also use the navy cardstock to mat my photo, and that photo is a 5x7 photo. It's a nice large photo, so it's going to work great here. At first I thought about tucking the photo behind the wreath of books, but my overall design, it just worked better to layer it on top. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to trim it out in a 3/16 border, and then I'm going to just overlay it across the book wreath on the right hand side. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for some pattern paper to back that circle. At this point, I'm not sure if I just want to leave it as a ring with that beautiful teal geometric pattern showing through, or if I want to add an additional pattern behind those books. When I get to this blue ledger paper, I love the tonal blue that's happening with the background and this ledger paper, so I go ahead and add the book wreath to this paper and then trim off the excess with my scissors. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to look for some additional pattern papers to complement these two patterns that I have going. I'm going to cut a strip of this red dash paper. I'm going to slip that under the left edge of my photo just to add some additional pattern interest, but also to anchor my photo. I know that I'm going to be adding my title in that blue ledger space to the left of the photo, and so this paper strip, along with another color that I add in a few minutes, will help to anchor that title that will be running sideways. I try to avoid putting titles on my page sideways because I just don't like the feeling of turning my head to read a title. I know that's really goofy, but once in a while the design just calls for it. And in this case, with that space to the left of the photo, it calls for a title right there. So that is what I'm going to be doing. Before I move on my photo, there was an electric outlet on the wall, and I wanted to cover it in that bottom right corner, and I wanted to cover it with these flowers. So in the embellishment kit, there was a pack of floral die cuts, but I've also fussy cut several flowers from the pattern paper in the main kit. And so I'm just I've put them all together in one pack, and here I'm just selecting a few pieces to just mix and match and create a floral spray to not only accent the photo, but to cover that distracting electrical outlet in the photo. So one thing I wanted to talk about here, because I've been seeing people talk about it online, is some people say, why do we always have to have a white offset line around die cuts? Now that largest piece in the center there is a fussy cut floral, but in the floral pack you'll find die cuts that have both a white edge and a solid edge. Now the reason for that, maybe you don't even care, but from a manufacturing point of view, the die lines shift slightly in production or the paper as it's being pulled through and printed, and it's a little bit of a shift. And so they have to have that white offset line to just allow for that slight shift. So usually when you see papers that have a flood of color all the way to or when you see die cut pieces that have a flood of color all the way up to the edge, it's because they are a solid color die cut, like those solid color leaves. So I don't know, just a fun fact about manufacturing that I thought you may not be aware of, so I thought I would just pass that on today. I actually prefer the die cuts with a white edge because I love using lots of pattern paper in my designs, and so those white offset edges really help the die cuts to pop off from all, or come forward from all of those other pattern papers that I like to use. Now that I have my book wreath all accented and going, I want it to feel grounded to the background. I don't want it to feel like it's just floating around on that teal geometric paper. So I cut a strip of this blue check paper. Isn't that cute? Those little check chevrons. I love that. It's such a happy pattern. So I've added a strip of that behind the book wreath so that it can feel anchored to the page. I wanted a little bit more color, so I found that yellow floral branding strip, and I'm going to add that along the bottom. Now you can see on the left side of that branding strip, I cut it at an angle when I was playing with it for another layout. So what I will have to do is come back and cut that piece in half and, hide the seam or the gap behind the photo so that you don't know that it had an angle and it will look like one continuous strip. I'm going through the cardstock die cuts. Well, I was going through the cardstock die cuts there just to add a bit more detail to this page. I've added that purple oval to the top right corner of my main photo. It almost acts like a tab. It's going to be a fun little accent up there. And then I'm going to create a little scene to the left edge of the book wreath with that house and that green telephone. I also came back in and added a strip of yellow pattern paper to that red dash paper where my title will rest against. I like that because you have a plus sign of yellow paper running both horizontally and vertically through the layout, and that bright yellow color just seems to capture your eye and help you, the viewer, read through the layout or search through the layout. So I like having continuous colors like that catch your eye and help everything feel connected and married together. Okay, so those strips that I put to the left of the photo I mentioned are going to anchor my title. So I'm going to start doing my title here. In the main kit, there were these dark blue puffy stickers, and I love them, but I'm starting to run out of letters. So I just did a part of my title with those letters, and then I grabbed some white thickers from my stash. This is the Subway font to finish out the title. And I like actually that the main word writer is in that nice large font. So that's, really calls your attention to the subject of this layout. I also added a fussy cut flower to the right side of that purple oval just because I want to have a little bit of flowers in each of my 3 clusters happening on the page to help them feel connected. Now I wanted to add a few more die cuts. I had a few spaces around that title, so I'm looking for little die cut pieces that I can put in those spaces around the photo. I pulled out the Pocket Life kit and I used the die to die cut the pieces, and I just ended up using the purple speech bubble next to the house. I thought I might find other pieces, but instead I went to the chipboard phrase strips, and I'm going to add a couple of those to the left of the word writer. I'm now going to pull out the January Pocket Life stamp, and I'm going to use one of the stamps to stamp inside that speech bubble, and the phrase I'm using is amazing story. You'll see that I'm using a lot of the phrases and words story that include story on this page, and that's because my daughter is a writer. She writes stories, and so I thought that would be fun. I've now created my journaling strips on the computer. I've also machine stitched with yellow thread around the edge of my page. And now I'm ready to add these phrase strips up in the upper left corner. It needed a little bit more room because my journaling was quite long. So I'm going to go ahead and pull everything up and just move it down slightly to allow space for those journaling strips. So let's go ahead and add those here. I'm just using a liquid glue. This helps them from falling off over time. It keeps them there nicely and secured. So I like using that. I've used dot adhesive in the past, but I've had trouble with it, so I always come back to a nice strong liquid glue for those tiny phrase strips. The final detail that I'm going to add to the bottom of the page is a fussy cut purple scallop. This is part of a pattern paper from the main kit, and I'm just going to tuck that there underneath, and I like how that continues the purple color of that purple oval that I placed on the photo, but also it just adds a fun detail, a different shape. So that is my layout, you guys. I did add a couple of puffy clouds above the house that you'll see in the detail shots, but thank you so much for watching all of my January 2023 Hip Kit videos. I will be back in a couple of days with my first layout using the February Hip Kit Club. See you then!